Can you see me and hear me clearly? Yeah, awesome, great. So happy Monday. Let's begin our session for today. Sit comfortably, keep your back and neck straight. Very gently close your eyes. Start watching your breath. Watch the natural flow of your breathing as you inhale and exhale. Slowly and gently shift the attention to the body. Make sure that you are correctly aligned. Keep the body comfortable and stable. Gently come back to the breathing. Slowly begin to deepen your breath. Slow, long, and deep inhalations. Slow, long, and deep exhalations. We'll start incorporating retention. So after you complete your inhalation, hold the breath in for about 2 seconds and then go into the process of exhalation. Take a few deep breaths in this pattern. We will begin today's session by chanting Om 3 times, followed by 3 Shantis. Take a deep breath in for Om. 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 Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Just observe the vibrations. Join your palms together. Begin to rub your palms together. Keep the palms on the eyes. Very slowly, while blinking and looking at your palms, begin to open up your eyes and come back with a big smile. Namaste to everyone. Let us begin our session for today. So today we are going to start with the next school of yoga, which is quite relevant when it comes to our daily lives. Very easy to incorporate, and in fact, if you happen to grow up in India or somewhere where religion is, you are from a family which is very religious by by their tradition, then this path, you are already introduced to this path, the path of bhakti yoga. So this is the path of devotion, right? Worship and devotion. Right, when we grow up, especially like, for example, in my family, there were like a lot of on all the festivals we used to pray, and every day, my mom used to sit, take out some time, and she used to make sure that we are also sitting with her, right? And she used to chant certain mantras, she used to read certain things, right? And in that half an hour or 20 minutes, basically, we used to like, and by default of that, there are a lot of mantras that we like know already. Then nobody has to teach us, it's passed on by tradition. Same thing goes for like people outside, they take out time to go to church, or they take out time to go to the religious places, and every day also they try to incorporate those things, take out some time in their day, and read their sacred texts, or maybe pray, right, in their like in the language in which they are supposed to pray. So bhakti yoga, by default, I think most of us, without even knowing, we practice bhakti yoga, right? And this is a very, very beautiful path. Why? Because this path is actually focused on the basic essence of uh, a human being, right? And that basic essence is love, right? The pure love, right? And it is this purity of love that we crave or desire, right? That it shows up in all the impure forms also, like when you get angry at someone, right? So you basically love them, that is why you get angry at them, right? If you are like feeling the emotion of jealousy or of sadness, again, it's happening because you love the other person. Maybe the other person is not able to give you the time and attention, and that converts in the impure form, right? Showing up as envy or as anger, right? But it is this basic essence of your being, right? So the chit, it has this quality of pure love, right? And because of these defilements of the mind, right, the impurities of the mind, it's never able to express, we are not able to express it properly, right? So this term bhakti, it is derived from the root word bhaj, which means loving service. So bhakti yoga is a path where you are, serving unconditionally, right? We often talk of unconditional love, right? But it's so hard to, even like give to someone and even to experience it, because we all have so many impurities of the in the mind, right? And yoga, when you follow the path of bhakti yoga, this is what these are the impurities that you cleanse out, right? When you see, the love of Mirabai or Krishna, right? They are considered to be examples of, pure unconditional love, right? Because um, they understood this emotion very properly, right? And all of us need love in our life. There was a scientific study done, um, and in that, small babies, they were not held and they were not loved, right? And then there was this other group which was constantly held and loved, right? And the group which wasn't held and loved at such a tender age, right, they actually didn't survive, right? That is the need for love in our life. If you see babies, they're constantly, asking you to hold them, like they open their arms out, right? And they just want you to, hug them or hold them, right? Because it is the basic human need. But now what has happened actually is it's like, milk. And when we mix water in it, or when we mix some chemicals in it, so all of these impurities are basically what मिलावट हो गई है basically. There is a mixture of other things, other impurities. And as you do so, basically the essence is there, right? When we are trying to show our love towards someone, the essence is there, the purity is there. But then so many other things crowded that we are never able to express it properly, right? So as you go through the process of yoga, these impurities, they start to get, like, you start to cleanse them or sort them out. And then what actually remains is the pure emotion of love, right? If you ever hear, like, listen to any talk of Osho, so Osho has talked a lot about this path, right? And he has himself said that, it is the all this anger and all of these things are basically layers of love. He calls all of these things, layers of love, different layers. So initially, if you say that you love someone, suppose I love my parents, right? So initially I will get angry, right? I will get angry at everything, right? Then slowly it will begin to deepen as I cleanse myself. So initially I started with a very, negative kind of emotion towards my parents, right? But then eventually, as the purification takes place, you come to the realization it is actually love which is driving you to even hate someone, right? Hatred requires so much energy, right? If you hate someone, if you have ever hated someone, okay, then you will see constantly on your mind, you are thinking how you can hurt them, how you can harm them, right? How you can cause some trouble in their life. And hatred requires so much energy, right? All the time you're putting all your energy in, creating and strategizing the plans, right? So what is happening actually, we ourselves are fools. We are fooling ourselves. We think we hate the other person, but it is the deep level of love which is making you hate them, right? It is this love which is allowing you to give so much energy to that person, that you are strategizing, right? How you can hurt them, right? So these are not opposites. Hate and love are two sides of the same coin. If you hate someone currently in your life, means you love them a lot. You love them, in fact, so much more than any other form of love, right? That you can give to someone. Because hatred is a very, it sounds very contradictory, but it is actually quite standard to understand that you are actually experiencing love for that person. And because things are not going as per your understanding, you begin to hate them, right? I have myself gone through this emotion. I used to, think that, okay, I hate um, this person, but then eventually I realized, oh, when I read more about bhakti yoga, I realized, okay, I am fooling myself when I'm saying this thing. It is hatred, right? So in that same way, when you develop this thing within you, if you connect with your emotions a lot, right? If you feel that you are able to surrender very easily, so Bhakti Yoga requires surrender, right? Most of us, we are unable to surrender, right? So suppose some class is taking place, or maybe you go and you know, learn something new, right? So you keep questioning, right? Till a particular point, you keep questioning that thing. The Bhakt never questions. The quality of surrender is not to question at all. That is why, you know, you will see a lot of people, you know, who fall in love. They never, you know, if you logically approach them and tell them that XYZ person is not good for you, they will never understand. Why? Because it is the emotion that makes you go into deep surrender, right? You cannot question at that point of time. When your emotions are very, very high, right? The mind, the logic, it goes away, right? And you will see, because your logic goes away, if you have ever fallen in love, you will always fall in love with a fool, right? You will always fall in love with a fool, and everybody in your life will tell you this person is not good for you. You will not be able to get this. These are your set of values. These are your set of ethics. It is completely against that, but you will not listen to any of your family, friends, no one, right? And it is only this emotion which can give you that level of strength. You know, it is a strength. I personally believe this thing. This is a very, you know, it's only when you love someone so much that you get the strength, you know, to, you know, accept the parts which are totally, against your set of values or ethics, right? It is only this emotion which is actually driving all human beings in general, right? We are all doing one thing or the other thing in our life just to, you know, have a little bit more love into our life, right? When we do something which we don't believe in, but it's agreeable for everybody around us, we do it, right? Why? Because of love only, right? So when one realizes that this is actually what is driving us, this is the purity of our nature, they work towards cleansing themselves by following the path of Bhakti Yoga. And in Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna, he has said that Bhakti Yoga is the fastest and easiest way, right? So Arjun is questioning him a lot. All the time he is like, I think it's chapter 12, chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, in which we are talking, the concept of Bhakti Yoga is covered, right? And till, if there are 18 chapters in Bhagavad Gita, till the 12th chapter, Arjun has already questioned Krishna ji a lot, right? Again and again, Lord Krishna, he is telling him of another path, right? Then again, he's telling him of another path. So by the 12th chapter, Krishna ji, he says, you leave all of this question, right? You leave the questioning, you leave the doubts, you leave the confusion behind, and you just surrender to me. Okay? You just surrender to me and act because I am telling you to act. I am telling you to fight the war. You don't have to think about anything. I am telling you that go and fight the war, and you have, as a devotee, you know, surrendered yourself to me. So whatever I say, you are doing that thing, right? You are supposed to. So this is the quality of the bhakti. So to someone who is, you know, external, bhakti yoga will seem madness, like madness, you know. It will seem like, you know, somebody is baselessly following someone else, right? But it is only the bhakt who understands this emotion. It is only the bhakt who is going through this entire process and seeing how it is cleansing them. Only they are able to understand this thing, right? So my grandmother, you know, she used to go to the temple a lot. So she used to wake up early in the morning. She used to, by 4 a.m., she used to be all ready to go to the temple. And at that point of time, I was really, really young. And I used to question her a lot. So every time she used to go to the temple, every day she used to, you know, have the same routine. So I used to question her a lot, right? And I used to have fights with her, right? So I used to be like, "Ye kyun kar rahe ho, wo kyun kar rahe ho? Why are you doing this and that? And why do you, you know, worship this God only? Why not that God?" So I was that kind of person, right? At one point of time. So I used to, have a lot of discussions with her. And after a point, I always saw that, she just, she never argued back, basically. I used to try, like provoking kind of nature. I had that a lot. So I used to provoke her a lot that, okay, ab gussa hongi, right? So then after one point of time in the discussion, she just used to, like not argue back. And she used to, start, um, she used to have mala and she used to do the mantras and everything, right? So I wasn't able to understand, and she couldn't even justify what she was doing, right? So that made me more angry because I was approaching bhakti yoga very logically, right? So I wanted logic for everything, and she couldn't give that to me. So I never understood why, she used to do all of those things until a point in my life when I actually, understood why she was doing that. So somebody who is external, Bhakti Yoga will make no sense. It will seem as if Bhakti Yoga is madness, right? But it is only when you step into it and you realize and recognize what is happening to you as you do those actions, as you, recite the mantras, or as you, go and attend the kirtans. That is when you realize, oh, okay, this is what, somebody was trying to say, or this is what was being said in Bhagavad Gita also, right? So slowly and slowly. So if you feel you are very emotional, you connect very easily to emotions, Bhakti Yoga is the path for you. Specifically for females, this is a very, very, good path. Good in the sense, very, very, it will easily fit into their lives. So they will not have to leave behind their responsibilities, right? So for men, you will see generally yogis, most yogis that are talked of, they are men only, right? Because society always has been structured in this way that it gives the leverage to men to leave behind their family, right? So what about women? Can they not practice yoga? They can, but they can incorporate this thing in the form of bhakti yoga. So bhakti yoga doesn't, take you away from your family or asks you to leave behind everything. You can exist in the society, and you can, constantly be a part of you. Now, this is not something I'm saying. Okay, this is just a generally observed thing, right? And if you feel you can leave your family behind and you want to go in seclusion, please feel free to do so, right? But for majority of women, Bhakti Yoga has really helped them to keep their spiritual journey going on. Okay, so today the time has changed a lot. Females are taking up more responsibilities. They are going and earning, working, everything. So again, it totally depends on you. But I'm telling you from the point of view of like what has been going on, right? So in Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna ji, he talks of bhakti yoga, he mentions two forms of bhakti, right? So first he called apara bhakti, A-P-A-R-A, apara. And second one he called Parabhakti, P-A-R-A, Parabhakti, B-H-A-K-T-I. Aparabhakti and Parabhakti. So the first form that he mentioned, it was more of a mechanical kind of form, right? So where, so the beginner level student, they will need certain, um, what is the right term for it? They will need some support, like when a baby begins to walk, right? So they need some support around them so that they can start walking, right? So in that same way, Apara bhakti is more about having that support system in order to help you to enter the emotional state. Okay, because bhakti yoga is all about emotion, so you have to enter the state of unconditional love. It is a state of our being, right? And when you get in touch with it, you feel that okay, this is what you are looking for basically, right? So to trigger this state of mind, you do some mechanical practices, right? So in the beginning they will seem mechanical, but as you deepen, you will again be able to feel those things more easily, right? So you will see bhakts, they do chanting of mantras, they do kirtans. So in that, singing is involved, dancing is involved, right? If you have ever been to, recently Escon has become very famous, right? Escon temple. And if you ever go and visit, so they have kirtans, right? Even here in school, when we have our offline courses, so Escon comes and there is a proper kirtan that takes place, and all the students, they dance, they sing, right? So um, bhakti yoga is also very enjoyable in this sense that karma yoga, it seems so serious, right? Gyan yoga, very serious, raj yoga, even more serious, right? But bhakti yoga, bhakt really enjoys, right? They enjoy this thing. That is why they have more motivation to stick to it, right? So kirtans and then kathas basically, when you choose a god. So in bhakti yoga, you choose a god. There are so many gods out there. So again, the quality of the god that you like, the story of the god that you like, you can go ahead and choose that god for yourself, right? So then you go for katha, so you get to know more about their life, how they existed, how they handled difficult situations, right? And it gives you an insight about how you can handle certain situations in your life. When you see uh, the god, conducting themselves, so it gives you the proper way of conduction also, like Ram, he was such a humble king. And then he left his kingdom, right? And he allowed his brother to rule the kingdom, even though he was the rightful heir of the kingdom, right? So these qualities, so when the bhakt is initially chosen, right? So they look at the qualities of the god, right? So suppose are a follower of Jesus Christ. So what, how does it show up that you are a follower? You imbibe those qualities, right? You try to see that, okay, am I also acting in that way? So Jesus was an amazing example of unconditional love, right? And how he interacted with everybody. So if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, very good, right? You should believe. But then also try to imbibe the qualities. So the bhakt tries to imbibe the qualities of the God they have chosen. Right? This is a very, very important factor when it comes to bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is not about the mechanical things only, right? It is these mechanical things which trigger the emotion, right? So again, if you believe in Lord Ram, again, his sense of duty and responsibility was very, very high. If you read about his life, he was very, very virtuous in nature. So you try to have those qualities within when you it's very similar to reading about somebody who is successful. When we read about somebody who is successful, what we do, we start inculcating those habits in our lives, right? So same way, when you read about the god, when you get to know about the god, so people they go and attend kathas where the story of the god or about their life it's told, right? So you begin to read, you begin to chant, you begin to do all the other rituals and rites, right? Some people, they have idols of god in their house, and when they wake up, first thing that they do, they go and wake up the god. Before eating, they serve food to the god. So to another person, it will seem as if the person has gone mad, right? You are just, doing everything for the stone. It is a piece of stone, right? But the bhakt, if you look in the bhakt eyes, there is a spark. They actually believe that God is really there. And it is our sense of belief, that gives life to that stone also. When you look at something with so much love and devotion, it gives life to that thing. So whenever you meet a bhakt, you will understand this thing. Either you will feel they are crazy, or you will understand this thing in their eyes, what shows up, right? People feed the god 3 times in a day, bathe, right? All of their routine is set around these things. So these are more of practices of apara bhakti, lower form of bhakti basically, where the entire routine is going on, all of these mechanical practices are going on. And what these practices actually do is they keep your mind away from all the negativities in life, right? So when somebody is giving their time to the practices of bhakti yoga, what is actually happening? Right? That same time I could have Netflix. That same time I could have, maybe watch some news, right? And again, the kind of things that I am watching, they are creating an impression in my mind, right? Again and again, they are creating a fluctuation in the mind. So bhaktis already, when they do all of these things, they are cutting off. They're channeling their entire energy towards their devotion, right? Then this, as you perform a parabhakti again and again for years and years, so it takes years and years. For most of us it will, but if there is a yogi, they will be able to reach more quickly, right? So after years and years of practice, this apara bhakti naturally turns into parabhakti. You cannot force this. Okay, you cannot say, oh, I am practicing parabhakti, right? No. A parabhakti practiced continuously for years and years will naturally transcend into the higher form, where the person sees God in everything and everyone around them, right? So now there is no restriction and barrier, right? Till a parabhakti, maybe a lot of people, they get stuck in a parabhakti only. They start debating, they start fighting that their God is better or their religion is better, right? So this is the lower form. Still, the cognition of the cognitive mind is working, right? And people try to defend their belief systems, right? But when one transcends into parabhakti, all of this duality or all of this seeming, that this is separate, this is separate, I am separate from everything around me, this goes away, right? Then the yogini, they see that you are a part of nature, you know all the gods, they are, just the beginning point is different. All the religions, all the traditions, just the beginning point is different. Slowly, as the purification takes place, you connect with the pure form of love. Now, no person is above you, below you, right? You are one. The yogi is one with the environment around them. They never feel they are separate, right? You will never observe the yogi taking any action which is against nature, right? You will never see the yogi, take any step which is, not in harmony with everything around them, right? They are so conscious of each and every action that they are taking. All the time the awareness is existing, right? This is the form of parabhakti. If you ever happen to meet a bhakt who has, with years of practice, naturally transcended into parabhakti, you will see the way of their interaction, the way of their conduction is so different, right? There is no, this is a VIP person, this is a common person. No, that thing, the moment that thing ceases to exist, parabhakti begins, right? You are interacting with everybody. You see God and everything and everybody around you. You even nature. right? Even each and every stone, pebble that is out there, flower, tree, then all the other people who are around you, all animals, you see God in everything. And this is a state nobody can force. Now, cognitively, you can think that, oh, there is God in this thing, oh, there is God in that thing. But you will not um, be able to reach that stage, right? If you do it from the mind, right? The mind gets shut off when you enter the stage of parabhakti. That is why bhakti yoga is a very, very powerful form of yoga. That you have to make no efforts. You just have to surrender. This is the beauty of this school of yoga. Often, when you do asanas, you do pranayam, you're making so much effort, right? So even Osho, again, he has talked on this. So he said, the Hatha Yogi, they create the steps to reach the goal, right? So they are putting in efforts to create the steps. When you do asana, when you do pranayama, one step again you are creating. But the bhakt doesn't create anything. Bhakt doesn't build the bridge. Bhakt literally just goes and jumps. When you jump off a cliff, the sense of freedom that you feel, it's very momentary. It is very momentary in nature, right? But the sense of freedom that you feel when you take a leap of faith, right? That is the one that the bhakt, takes. If you ever come across somebody who is practicing Sufism, again, Sufism is a great example, right? All of their practices are aligned. The work that they do, and you will see dance is why I love bhakti yoga. And Sufism also, there is a very particular form of dance that they do, that it is so enjoyable. You feel like participating in bhakti yoga. You want to dance, you want to sing, you want to celebrate, right? And this celebration is so important, and this celebration is what will keep you focused on your path, right? So bhakti yoga, again, if you guys feel that okay, this is the path for us, read the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you will get to know more about it. Yeah. So any doubts so far in anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So yeah. So there are different types of bhakts also. Now when you enter a particular field, you see there are so many little things in that field, right? So like you entered yoga. So initially you used to think that okay, yoga is all about the asana practice, the pranayam practice. But when you came over here, you realized, oh, there is meditation also, there is philosophy also, okay, there is alignment also. So you get to know more about it. So when you enter the field of bhakti yoga, again, you get to know that not everybody is practicing with this intention, right? The intention of purity, right? A lot of factors drive us towards this path of yoga, right? So depending on that, there are types of bhakts also. So first bhakt is called artharthi, sorry, uh, arth, sorry, ARTHA, arth bhakt. So this is the form that we are generally experiencing, okay, these days. The arth bhakt, they are their basic needs are not being fulfilled, or you can say they enter bhakti yoga out of like suffering, right? Suffering is a better term, right? So when somebody very close to you, so this has happened with me a lot of times, when somebody really close to me, they are going through something, or I see no hope, everybody has given up, right? So I just find myself sitting and praying, right? When you feel that okay, there is, or you feel very helpless, suppose somebody very close to you, they go for a surgery, right? And you don't know in those hours what you have to do. You feel very helpless and restless. You don't understand. Ab kya karu, right? So you find yourself, going to a temple and just praying, praying for their betterment. Kuch ho jaye, some miracle happens, something happens. So when human being gives up on all the logical things, they cannot control anything. They go to a temple and they pray, and it is their suffering which drives them. Suppose there is, absolute, like, crisis of money in your house, and that, logically you don't know where the money is going to come from, right? But you find yourself praying, right? Maybe some miracle will happen, or maybe something will happen, and my family will survive this hard time, right? So most of us enter bhakti yoga through this we are this type, like this category of bhakts, right? We enter into prayer, into surrender, because life forces us to, right? And then we find ourselves surrendering completely. So we are in the earth category, some basic need or some basic thing which is so essential to our survival, that is not okay, or that is not correct. So we go to the temple, we pray, we chant the mantra, we make wishes for miracles to happen, right? Then the next form of bhakt is called artharthi, right? Artharthi, Artharthi. Right? So most of the people in today's world, you will find they are in the first category. But then there is this second category also, right? So like most of you who are present over here, most likely will come in the second category, right? Because the basic needs are being fulfilled. If you have a smartphone in your hands or a laptop in your hand, means basic needs are being fulfilled, right? So now what happens is, then the other state of the mind, it gets triggered, right? So now you are rising a little bit above the survival or the basic things. And the artharthi, they do bhakti because they want to gain more material benefits, right? So sometimes, you go and pray for a promotion, right? You pray to God, oh, this position has been is vacant, so many people are applying for it, but I hope that I get it, right? So the artharthi will always, they will pray again. So this basic thing is not being compromised upon. They will pray, or they will do the chanting of mantras, or whatever things they can do in bhakti yoga. And they will do what? They will ask for material, wealth. They will ask for some kind of abundance to show up in their life, right? And this is restricted to the physical world only, right? May you get that house or that car, or xyz thing that you are looking for, right? So then you will see a lot of people who are privileged enough, they come in the second category. They go and pray to God for all of these things, right? So first two categories, only the lower level of the mind is functioning. Whatever I see around me, that I consider to be my reality, and I want that to be good, right? Then you come to the third category, which is jikyasu. Jijnasu. Jikyasu. So now Jigyasu is also very, very lucky, It is our luck in our life, or, maybe because of something we did in our past, that today we don't have to, fight for food, fight for clothes, fight for shelter. We are very lucky, right? And suppose it so happens that, okay, you are quite well off, or all right. Doesn't necessarily mean to me uh, have to be being just well off, right? You are you know your survival is going to be just fine, everybody is going to live comfortably, then this, curiosity strikes in, then the high level of the mind begins to function. Now you have the time, you don't have to look for shelter all the time, right? You don't have to look for the food all the time, right? So now this higher level of the mind, it gets triggered, and it, pushes you that there is something more to life. There is some void or some emptiness that I feel inside me, and no matter what I acquire, in my life, I'm not able to satisfy this thing, right? So slowly and slowly, bhakt also, these are like upgrades. Okay, so now at this point of time, especially with COVID coming in, a lot of people, they were stuck at home, and they, started questioning, how have I lived my life? All this time I have lived my life in just this way, right? Why am I living my life in this way, right? So it made a lot of people question, and they were able to see that no matter what they had, they want, people who go to work, all they want is a good vacation, right? With the lockdown, everybody got a good vacation. They were at their home, right? They got so much time with their families, right? And everybody wanted to do what? They wanted to hit their head on the wall, right? Now they got what they were looking for, maybe to spend more time with the kids, with the wives, husbands, with the parents, right? And all of us went crazy in that thing, right? So then this higher level of the mind gets triggered. जो मैंने आज तक सोचा मुझे चाहिए था, whatever I thought I needed till now, वो मिल गया. I got that thing. But I'm still not happy. I am still struggling. I'm still suffering. So what is the solution? How do I get out of it? So the Jigyasu becomes curious of this thing, right? And looks for something. Maybe there is an answer when I go to the temple, or I go to the church, or, so to a masjid, gurudwara, I don't know. Whatever you guys, wherever you guys go, looking for answers, So Jigyasu enters Bhakti Yoga with a higher state of mind, you know now looking for the greater meaning of life, that life can just not be this cycle of going to work, coming back, sleeping, eating, going to work. Life has more to offer. But what is that more? you know to live your life, what is to live your life? This is just a circle, rat race that you are running in, right? But then you get pushed. Okay, go, discover. Nature is giving you an opportunity. Come on the path of spirituality. Free yourself from all these suffering. So the Jigyasu enters with this state of mind. Again, a very high level state of mind. Not all of us, have the ability to question these things in our life. Right? You will find most people are just fine with their day-to-day routines. Running to work, running to school, coming back, eating the food, everything. They are just happy and comfortable in that cycle, right? But sometimes, something nudges us to think beyond this thing, beyond our routines, beyond what we are comfortable in, right? Then you move to the fourth category. So Jigyasu is out because of curiosity, and then the fourth level of bhakt is Gyani. Jnani. So if you are in yoga, most likely you are at least curious. Something triggered you in your life, some form of suffering, or something came up which, opened up your eyes, and you said, okay, let's go and, learn a little bit more about yoga. Maybe this will give us the answer, right? So then the fourth form comes in, which is Gyani. Now, Gyani knows there is a higher meaning, there is a greater purpose, right? And the Gyani has been practicing for a very long period of time already, right? So, Gyani is very, very high level of bhakti. They have been practicing, doing their rites and rituals continuously. It can be in any form, right? So, they have been doing all of these things regularly with a lot of faith, and they know that ultimately, you know, God is within all of us. So they have somewhere, the Gyani is actually, very in the beginning stages of Parabhakti, you can say, or in Parabhakti itself, because Gyani knows what they have to do. They have been doing it for a while, and they know this is the path. So they keep following it. They just know it's a matter of time only and practice only that they will reach their final goal, right? But they choose the practice of bhakti, right? So you will again find a lot of examples of people who are currently pursuing this, right? And if you want to like know more about the concept of bhakti yoga, maybe even reading a little bit about Sufism, that will give you a very deep insight into bhakti yoga, right? Very, very deep, because they are also doing the same thing. They are surrendering, right? If you again, if you read about the life of Mirabai, if you read about the life of Kabir, right? Their poems, whatever they have given, even Rumi is a great example of the same thing. If you read anything that he has written, you will find glimpses of Bhakti Yoga in his writings, right? And if you want to read more theoretically about it, again, I told you guys before also, Swami Vivekananda has written about Bhakti Yoga very beautifully. So you can get a hold of his book, Swami Swami Vivekanand. Vivekananda. Swami Vivekanand. You can look for his book on Bhakti Yoga. So you'll get to know more about it. Any doubts in today's session? No doubts? Nobody?
No, ma'am.
All right. Oh, great. All right. So let's close our session for today. Keep your back and neck straight. Gently close your eyes. We'll chant one time, followed by 3 Shantis. Take a deep breath in for Om. Om. Shanti. 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 Join your palms together and gently bow down. We'll begin our day with a sense of gratitude. Begin to rub your palms together. Keep them on the eyes. Very slowly, while blinking and looking at your palms, begin to open up your eyes. Come back with a big smile. Namaste, everyone. I will see all of you in the afternoon for your pranayam class. Take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.